hear me. Hopefully you can hear me and see the screen and the presentation. Welcome back. I did 6 hours of training yesterday, so I've already been back. And today we're going to share with you effective communication, but we're looking at it from a different perspective. We're going to talk about body language, our listening skills, and the use of technology. Now, I would venture to say that most people on this call think that you are good communicators because most people do. But believe it or not, the way in which you communicate can determine your level of trust that your colleagues and your customers put in you. Did you know that nearly 75% of all communications that are received are misinterpreted? So that means 3 out of 4 times that you send a message, the receiver doesn't truly understand what you meant. They may or may not say so. So that's why it's so easy for communication to become miscommunication. Our body language, our listening skills, the technology that you're using, like today, all plays a part in that. So that's what we're going to talk about briefly today. As you know, I'm with the Employee Assistance Program. You know that benefit is still out there for you if you need it. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about how to improve our communication skills, how to get our message across more effectively, and how to listen with our entire body. The single biggest issue when it comes to communication is the illusion that the other person heard what you said, that they understood what you meant, that the communication has taken place. When you say something, it does not always mean that you're understood the way that you meant to be understood. There are many things that we can do to improve our communication. How we say it, what we say, the means by which we communicate, ensuring that the intended audience got it and fully understood what we were trying to share with them. So, to effectively communicate with others, you first want to make sure that you're using the right channel because there are so many different ways that we can communicate right now. We're on Zoom, we're on Teams, we're on our text, we're on messaging, we're at email, phone calls, in person. There's so many sign language. Okay, so many different ways that we can communicate. You want to make sure that you're choosing the right channel for the right audience. And then you always want to keep your message concise and to the point. You don't go on and on and on. Be aware of your tone, be aware of your body language. Be prepared that everyone may not get it. They may not agree with what you're saying. You don't want to be too passive when we communicate, where people walk over you or ignore you or undermine you. And you don't want to be too aggressive, where you're seen as a bully, where you're forcing your opinion on others. But you want to be somewhere in the middle where we're assertive. You have rights, I have rights. We're looking for a win win situation all the time, and we're making sure that we get our message across. Also, it's not necessary to use what they say 50-cent words. You don't have to use big words just to be able to share what's on your mind. You tailor it to your audience. So if you're talking to someone who's in elementary school, you want to bring your words and your communication style down to that level. As opposed when you're at the principal's meeting or the board meeting, you can take your communication style up to that level. So, in order to make our communication effective, we have to be versatile. It changes. So, how can you maximize the chance of you being heard? Because everyone wants to be heard. That's the whole purpose of communicating. Well, first of all, if you're upset, if you're emotional, if you're angry, that may not be a good time to try to communicate. And usually that's when people want to continue the argument. But if everyone is emotional, then no one is listening. If the other person raises their voice and you raise your voice, now you just have a shouting contest, but no one is listening. We actually encourage when the other person raises their voice and get loud, you lower your voice and you keep lowering your voice until the person has to change their posture, or they have to lean in, or they recognize how they look if they're screaming and you're speaking calmly. Okay. If you have bad news to share, do not share that news over a text, over an email, over a fax, over a phone call. Those are the kind of things that you want to do face to face when possible. There was a big article a few months ago where a company had a Zoom call and they terminated over 900 people on a Zoom call. That was totally inappropriate. You want to share bad information face to face, but not over a Zoom call with 900 people on the call. I've never seen anything like that in my many years of human resources. You also want to consider the setting when you're meeting with someone. If you're at a nightclub or happy hour and it's loud and people are having difficulty hearing, then that may not be the best time to share important information or sensitive information, because you will now be shouting and other people will hear your conversation. You also want to avoid uh, blaming the other person. When we use the word you, see how the finger comes out automatically? You screwed up, you didn't do right, a person feels that they're being attacked. So you want to talk about yourself. Always put things on the onus on you. I'm misunderstood. I'm confused. I thought we had an agreement. I don't understand what's happening right now. You put it on you, not on the other person. That will open up your communication instead of shutting it down. And always, we want to be able to ask for feedback. Ask open ended questions to get that conversation going, not a yes or no question, which generally will shut down the conversation. So, these are just some overall things that you want to make sure that you're doing when you're communicating with others. And I'm sure that you're already doing all of these things. But today we're just going to tweak it a little bit on how we can be even more effective. So, when we talk about our communication style, there are a couple of things that we look at. Basically, we have the passive people who feel that my rights don't matter, your rights matter. So it's okay if you walk all over me. You have an aggressive person who says that my rights are all that matters. I don't care about yours. And then somewhere in the middle, you have an assertive person who says, you have rights, I have rights. Let's find that win win situation so that we can get through the situation. So, passive people are more withdrawn and they don't assert themselves. Okay. An assertive person is right there in the middle. An aggressive person, those are the ones who are more competitive, and it's more of a I win, you lose type of situation. So here's the question: in which of these styles does the other person get their needs met? And in which style do you get your needs met? So when you're passive, the other person may get their needs met, but you're not getting your needs met. And that's when we can feel that we're not a part of the conversation, we're being overlooked, we're being ignored. In the aggressive style, the other person is getting their needs met, but you may not be getting yours met because they're talking over you, they're interrupting, they're yelling, they're screaming. But when we choose an assertive style of communication, your needs are being met and the other person's needs are being met. That's when we truly have a win win situation. So let's talk about body language. Now, you all know what body language is, but were you aware that people will see your body language and listen to your body language more than they do the words that are coming out of your mouth? So your body language makes up for about 70% of your communication. Did you know that? So there's power in our nonverbals. And we know a nonverbal is simply anything that's not said, but your body language says a lot. So look at the pictures that you see there on the screen. The first picture, we see the lady has her hands up to her head, the first upper left. Would you say that she's sad, upset, angry, frustrated? We know that something's going on in that picture. The guy in the middle, upper top, he looks very confused. He's probably trying to get on a Zoom call or a Teams call, but he's very confused right now. And then we have the couple on the upper right, arms crossed, backs turned toward one another. They're having a difficult time communicating right now. And that says a lot. Are they in an argument? They don't look happy. The guy, bottom left, he's about to break that computer. That's what I felt like doing this morning because I could not get my PowerPoint to work for quite a few minutes. I wanted to break the computer, but I know that's not the right answer because I've learned to control my emotions. The lady in the middle, she has her arms crossed. We've often said that when you cross your arms, you're blocking information. You don't want information to get in. Now, some people will say, oh, no, my arms are crossed because I'm cold. It's chilly in here. Well, when we're cold, we hold our arms differently than when we're blocking information. So keep that in mind the next time you're in a conversation. And then the lady on the end, she's smiling, she's looking off. She may be dreaming of happier times. She's thinking, we can look at body language and tell a lot about a person by their gestures, by their tone, by their facial expressions, by what they're doing, whether they're engaged and leaning forward, or whether they're laid back and rolling their eyes and sighing and huffing and puffing. See, our body language says so much. Sometimes people cannot hear your verbal conversation because your nonverbal is speaking so loudly. People also want to look at your nonverbals to make sure that it's congruent with what you're saying. So let's talk about what happens when we're trying to understand other people. We have two people right now on the screen. They don't look very happy. Those arms are crossed. They're rolling their eyes at each other. Probably had a conversation that didn't go very well. So, how do we understand others better? What a person says gives you information about what they're thinking. But what your body language says gives you information about what that person is feeling. I want to repeat what you say indicates what you are thinking, but what your body language says indicates what you are feeling because our feelings come out in our emotions. Your body language may replace what you're saying, it may reinforce what you're saying, or sometimes it totally contradicts your verbal message. And it can have a direct impact on your relationships of how people see you. If you're constantly rolling your eyes or looking sideways or mumbling under your breath or, here we go again, people see that. They notice all of that. And you may say, yeah, I'm fine. But your body language did not say that you were in agreement with that. So reading your body language signals, reading another person's body language signals will help you to interpret what the person is feeling about what's going on at that moment. So we can use our body language in so many different ways. So let's break this down a little bit. When we think about our eyes, how do your eyes communicate? Well, you want to consider the impact whether you're looking someone directly, eye to eye contact. So when you're on a Zoom call, how do you make eye contact? By looking directly into the camera, as I'm doing right now. If you're constantly looking down, if you're looking away, if you're looking up, if you're looking somewhere else, you're not making contact, eye contact with that person. Do you trust people who won't look you in the eye? If you're having a face to face conversation and the person keeps their head down the entire time they're talking to you, do you really trust what they're saying? No. We need to see your eyes. And if you have shades on, there are times they may ask you, can you take your shades off? Because I want to see your eyes. I want to see into your soul. I want to know what's going on. So be aware of your eye contact, even when you're on these platforms. Look into the camera, make eye contact with the other person, because that tells us so much during that conversation. Okay. If you're looking away, then we feel that what we're saying is not important, so we may stop talking. But you want to make eye contact. Let the person know that you're engaged. Now, what do we do with our hands? Some people talk with their hands. There are some cultures that are known for talking with their hands. Their hands are all over the place during the conversation. You think they're about to fight, but they're not. They're just talking with their hands, and they have to have hand movement. There's some people, if you ask them to tie their hands down, they can't communicate. Their voice won't work if their hands are not moving. Okay. Sometimes our gestures of what we do with our hands say a lot. Now, there are some gestures you can make with certain fingers that send a message to someone. So, you want to be aware of how you're using your hands when you're communicating. Again, crossing our arms, whether you're open, whether you're welcoming the conversation, whether you reach out your hand to someone, whether you're stopping the conversation, your hands play a lot. And if you do this when someone is talking, get to the point, you're trying to rush them, that can be very disrespectful. So if you have a tendency to do that sometimes, learn this strategy. Put your hands under your thigh and sit on your hands while the other person is talking so you don't interrupt with your hands or have too much. Some people like to touch when they talk. So they want to rub you or touch your shoulder or touch your arm or touch your hand. If you're a touchy person, that's fine. If you're not a touchy person, then you don't like that type of behavior. So be aware of our hands. Facial muscles. Are we frowning? Is your resting face a frown? And we're like, smile. And you say, I am smiling. Okay, then you probably need to work on that resting face because that's not the message that your face is sending. You want to let your face know when you're smiling, let your brain know when you're smiling. And smiles are free. A smile covers any language barrier. Every uh, group, every culture understands a smile. Every language understands a smile. So even if I don't understand the words you're saying, I understand a smile. So you want to give those away all day long. And the more smiles you give away, the more smiles come back to you. You cannot outgive a smile. All right, we've talked about posture, whether you're leaning forward to show that you're engaged or whether you're slumping back to show that you're bored. Your posture makes a difference. So you want to make sure that you're engaging with your audience. Your voice, know when to take your up and when to bring it down. Now, some people have a tendency, and every word they say ends in a up because all they do is talk up all day. That can be very irritating when you're in a long conversation. So be aware of how you're using your voice. Know when to emphasize certain words and when to use a different tone to get your message across. Now, personal space has become a big issue right now. For the last 2 years, we're aware of our physical distancing, not social distancing, physical distancing, okay? Because I can measure 6 feet. That's a physical measurement. And we all have a bubble around us. And when people get too close, it becomes uncomfortable when they're in your bubble. So even though they're taking away the 6 feet distancing, you still want to make sure that you give people enough room to feel comfortable. We used to say you have about an elbow around you, that you don't like people too close when they're in line at the grocery store or too close when they're talking to you. If you're having a face to face conversation and the other person is constantly pulling back, you may be too close or you need a breath mint. So be aware of your personal space. Okay. So when we're communicating, here's some other tips for you. Be aware of cultural differences. We all have filters based on your race, your gender, your age, where you grew up, where you fall in the family, what level you are in the organization. We all have filters that we process information through. So be aware that everyone may not process the information exactly the same as you. There are cultural differences, age differences, excuse me, gender differences, all of that comes into play. Sometimes you want to practice your conversation. Use a mirror. Watch yourself in the mirror, especially for speakers. We're trained to talk to ourselves in the mirror so that we can see our behavior, so that we can monitor our gestures. You may want to do the same, especially if you have an important conversation coming up. You want to make sure that you get everything congruent so that it all goes together. You can record yourself and play it back. Listen to how you sound. I personally don't like to hear myself on a recording. And I always go, who is that person? That's not how I sound. But yeah, that's how you sound. So be aware of your voice and how you sound. Okay. Now, let's talk about listening very quickly because listening is the biggest part of communicating. It's not about the words that's being said, it's about being able to hear what's being said. So, what happens when we listen? Effective listening involves using your entire body. You listen with your ears. Hearing is the vibration in your ear. But listening is being able to hear the words that are said and to hear the words that were not said, to be able to read between the lines, to listen with your ears is more than just hearing, but it's listening to what the person is saying, how they're saying it, their tone. Then we also listen with our eyes because we're watching the body language. We're looking to see if the verbal and the nonverbals are congruent. And then we also want to listen with our heart because that means that we are empathizing, not sympathy, empathy, where we can put ourselves in that person's shoes so we can understand and appreciate what they're saying, what they're conveying, and what they've gone through. I may not have experienced exactly what you're experiencing, but I can relate and appreciate how you're feeling right now. I understand, even though I may not have experienced it myself. So we listen with our ears, our eyes, and our heart. Now, here's some tips for being a good listener. Number one, show that you're listening. We've already talked about that. Look the person in the eye, lean forward, use encouragements like, right, nod your head. Wow, I see. Okay, now understand women are natural when it comes to the encouragements. Men don't do it as much. A male can sit there and not move. That does not mean that he is not listening to you. Men just don't use the encouragers as much as women do. Okay. You also want to focus on the message, not on the messenger. Sometimes we spend so much time looking at the person who's sharing the information that we lose sight of the information that's being shared. So, what is this message that I need to take away from this? And it's not always about the messenger. Check for understanding. Ask questions, replay it back, paraphrase it back to the person to make sure that what you heard is what the person wanted you to hear. Make sure that you're understanding. And don't get upset if someone doesn't get your message the first time or if you didn't get their message. It's okay. Remember, 75% of most communication is misunderstood. And when you go through a workshop like today, you only remember about 10% of what you actually heard. That's why it is great to have a recording. It's great to have a copy of the presentation so that you can go back and review it later. These are ways that we improve our listening skills. Okay, very quickly, let's talk about technology. We have so much technology in front of us right now. OMG. Do you remember when phones first came out? And we used to have a party line. So another family could listen in on your phone call, or you could listen in on theirs. And then you had the phone attached to the wall with the 50-foot cord. So you could move that cord and you could walk around the house on that one telephone. And then we got that first cell phone was a brick and it was this big and it had a battery pack that you used to wear on your back, had a huge antenna you'd have to pull out. I know millennials, I know you don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway. But phones now, we're talking into our watch. We've got email, instant messaging. We've got webinars, Zoom, Teams. We've got, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We've got all this stuff going on in our lives right now. So technology is all around us. And for our millennials, you were born into a technology age. You have not known life without technology, without cell phones, without internet, without the computer. But sometimes our technology can get in the way of our communication. So this is when you do want to make sure that you're using the right format for whatever message you're trying to convey. Okay. The other thing about online communication, when you're texting, when you're sending an email, there is no nonverbals. Okay. You can't see it. You can't see the person's emotion. You can't see what they're feeling when they read it. So, what you may intend as a joke is the impact that the other person has when they're reading it. So, when they open it and they've had a rough day and they read your text or your email, it wasn't funny to them. Now they take it personally. So you want to be aware that there's so many opportunities for misunderstanding and miscommunicating when we're using technology. Here's some of the do's for you. Don't write in all caps. You already know that. That's considered yelling. Don't send all of your message in red. That's definitely anger. You know, don't put your dirty laundry out there on the internet. A point, baby boomers, when we were growing up, whatever we did in high school and college, it dies with us. You know, no one knows it. But this young generation, your entire life is on Facebook. Everything is being recorded. It is there forever. People can research 100 years from now and find what you said and find videos of what you did. So please be careful with what you post because it does not go away. Just because you delete the post, it's still out there. Okay. Uh, be concerned about anything you put in print as well because there are copies out there. All right. Let's make sure that our voicemails are not too long because the machine will cut you off. Let's make sure that our emails are concise and to the point. Don't hit reply all if you don't want everybody in your business. Make sure you check who you're sending it to. Okay, let's see. Be aware of pictures and things that you post. Be aware of tags of who you're tagging in your information. Be aware of the language. It may have sexual overtones or inappropriate overtones. And don't send me a chain letter. We used to have chain letters. Now they're chain emails and chain texts. I'm sending this to the 10 women I like the most. Now you send it to 10 more women, and you send this to 10 people. And if you break this chain, your arm is going to fall off. Please avoid doing that. And people even do it on work communication. So don't do that. Okay. I got 2 minutes. I'm talking very fast. Don't use email when you're sending out difficult information. Meet in person. Don't be too blunt. Learn to soften your tone because when you're writing, sometimes it comes off as very strong or very forceful. I'm ex military. I write in a very strong style. When I got out of the military, I had to learn to pull it back and quote, put fluffy words in there like good morning. I don't just start off with your conversation. Do a salutation at the beginning. Let the person know that you know you're talking to a real person. Okay. All right. Let's see. Telephone and email. Record a voicemail that lets people know the information, not just your name, but who you are, where you are, when's the best time to reach you. When you're leaving emails, be very concise. This is Darlene. I heard you had information on the XYZ project. I'll be back at my desk between 2:30 and 4:15. Please call me between that time or just shoot me an email if you have the information. When that person gets that, they know what to do with it. Don't play telephone tag back and forth. Okay. And speak slowly when you're leaving a message. You know your phone number, but the other person is trying to write it down. My phone number is 742. What? 743. So they've got to replay it a number of times. Avoid calling someone when you're angry or when you are upset. Calm down first. And then finally, we know everyone uses text messaging right now. Keep it short. A text message should not be 2 or 3 texts connected. That's an email, that's a letter, or that's an in person conversation. And don't use too many emojis. You know, we started out cavemen drew pictures and that was called hieroglyphics. And then we learned how to speak, and then we learned how to write. And now we've shortened all of our sentences, and we're back to speaking with pictures. The world goes around. That's the circle of life. But do consider your audience. A lot of us older folks don't understand all the emojis. So make sure that you use the ones. LOL for us used to be laugh out loud, is what it is now, but it used to be lots of love. Things have changed. So make sure that the emoji that you're using, everyone understands it. Okay. So here's what I want to end with. Effective communication, when we're communicating effectively, it reduces miscommunication, it reduces miscommunication, misinformation, mishaps. But take your time, make sure that your body language, your technology, the verbal and the nonverbals are all congruent. And then make sure that you check in with the person you're communicating with to make sure they got the message that you were sending. And you, as a receiver, check in to make sure that you received what the person intended for you to receive. I am out of time. Thank you so much for having me here today. Have a wonderful day. Miss Debbie, is there anything else that you need from me at this time? Any questions or comments from anyone? Debbie, are you out there?
I'm here. Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation. Always good to remind ourselves of those helpful tips, the body language, especially as we are in this virtual world that we're living in. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. Give me a moment.
And please send me the attendance